Alex O'Connor, in his recent video, his Q&A video, was talking about not existing, if he'd rather not exist or suffer forever or flip a coin and experience basically heaven forever. And so the two sides of the coin, one was eternal suffering and one was eternal happiness, basically. And if he didn't flip the coin, he would cease to exist. And Alex he then said that he would choose nothing as instead of the flipping the coin. So he believes that after we die, there would be nothing. And he reaffirmed this later in the video when he was talking about death once again. He called it the nothingness after death.
Always be infinitely good or infinitely bad seems very different from like no experience whatsoever. More importantly, bad. I mean, it seems to be potentially infinitely bad because it goes on forever. And so compared to like the nothingness of not flipping the coin, even that like...
So this is Alex's most recent take on death. So it appears that he believes in nothingness after death. Because that was the last thing he said in a video about death, was he implied that nothingness comes after we die. So I must ask, what does he mean by nothingness? Why didn't he just say cease to exist? He used a descriptor instead. What is the ness of nothing? How can there be the suffix ness for nothing? Nothingness. Like bitterness. We understand what that means because it's a subjective experience. It's qualia. There's something to it. It's an experience of bitterness. But when one says nothingness, what exactly are they saying? Usually, it implies an unending lack of experience. They'll often compare it to general anesthesia, being put under only forever, they say. Or some will say that it's a black void, an endless, silent black void where somehow you don't experience anything. Yet it must be pointed out that if it's blackness, or is black, then there must be a viewer, an observer of said black. Or else, why would you say it's black? It doesn't make sense. The thing about general anesthesia, whenever you're put under, and I've been put under before, I got my wisdom teeth pulled, you don't experience a gap. It's just, from your point of view, from the perspective of consciousness, it's just continuous. You are given the gas, or however they administer it, and the next thing you know, you kind of feel tired and stuff, and then you start waking up. It's as if absolutely no time has passed. Just like from the moment I just said past until this moment. There's just no experience of a lack of experience. You notice that the clock on the wall has changed, that an hour has passed, or however long, and you might see that people are sitting in different places in a room, or things have changed. But from your perspective, there was absolutely no sensation of a break in experience. So Alex is pretty on board with the idea of brains being responsible for consciousness. And he's familiar with the concept of the self, even though there might not be a self, a kind of passenger riding along in our brain. Some might say we are our brains. So you gotta look at it this way. You are, if we're going to take on board the naturalistic worldview, the scientific worldview, it's called, and say that brains are responsible for consciousness, then you are just a brain that was born and started doing consciousness. So there was a brain born, and then it started doing consciousness. So you technically didn't come to exist until after a brain was born. And after that brain developed some specific traits, behaviors, and character that would distinguish it from other brains. So you can see yourself as the product of a brain. So if you imagine, here's a thought experiment. Imagine a universe completely devoid of all life, and then a brain pops into existence. And then this brain goes through certain experiences, and this brain eventually starts doing the experience that you're having right now. Now, this brain could be hallucinating all of this. You watching this video of me walking through the woods talking right now, this could all be a figment of your imagination. So this brain, which is you, has come to be you. It took some time, but eventually this is where it has made it to. And so now imagine this very same brain, instead of it developing into you, that it eventually developed into someone else. But it's the same brain, but it just experienced different experiences for whatever reasons. And these experiences led to it being a completely different person, although it's the same brain. And we can keep running this experiment all with the same brain. It just keeps becoming different people. And if we make enough changes to this brain by some kind of cosmic surgery, however, it could become other creatures. But it's that same brain that is the only one that came to exist in the universe. So now you're familiar with the idea that a brain came to exist, and then that brain became what is responsible for you, for creating your specific traits and behaviors, etc., your personal subjective experience. So now let's apply this idea of a brain being responsible, the birth of a brain being responsible for you. Now I'd like you to imagine an empty universe once again, devoid of all life, and then a brain comes to exist. And eventually, this brain is recognized as you. So now I'll rewind this thought experiment again. It's this time a completely different brain comes to exist. And so now it's doing experience. But for whatever reason, it too ends up being you. And now, let's rewind the thought experiment once again. This time, a completely different brain comes to exist once again. And this time, this brain does not come to be you. It comes to be a completely different person or animal, completely different subjective experience. So, where are you, since you don't exist? What is that? Where are you to block or impede this experience from being experienced? In the same way you didn't exist before you were born, your lack of existing wasn't able to stop a life from coming after your lack of existing. Because that's all it was you didn't exist, but then a brain was born, a biological organism that has a brain in it. So a brain was born, and it started doing consciousness, and that's what turned the lights on. So if you were never born, how would your lack of existence, just as your lack of existence wasn't able to stop a life from coming after that lack of existence, how would your lack of existence be able to stop some other life from being the one that came after non-existence? It wouldn't be able to. It would be a completely different life. It wouldn't be you in a different body, but it would be a life nonetheless. Some random life somewhere in the universe, just like it was a random life somewhere in the universe that came after the last time you didn't exist. This life, the one watching this video. So if you were to die tomorrow or right now, whenever, what would stop a life, a biological life somewhere in the universe, from following being what comes after your death? How would your lack of existing have the power to stop yet another life from coming after this one? If lives are born all the time in the universe, they come to exist all the time. You don't exist, so there'd be no way for you to stop it. Just as there was no way for you to stop this life from following the last time you didn't exist. This is because only experience is what's experienced, as anesthesia shows us, and our daily lives show us, that we only ever experience. We don't experience periods of time when there are no experience. We can't experience a lack of experience. And this is true on a much higher level. Whenever you die, because other brains will be doing experience after you die, there's going to be experience after you die. It won't be a continuation of you. And this isn't to imply open individualism. Although we can look at things, if we view the universe in a certain way, we can say that open individualism and closed individualism are true. Here's how. If you look at the universe as just imagine it as one big circle, and then within that circle there's different parts of the universe which we call brains, but they are parts of the universe. They're atoms that make up the universe, just like this tree here is a part of the universe. This brain in your head and my head and everyone's head is just another part of the universe. And so within this thing we call the universe is all these locations, all these spots and instances of consciousness. As far as we know, they're just in one little spot here on Earth, but they might be in many other places in the entire universe. And so in this way, this massive thing has all sorts of different consciousnesses occurring at the same time within it. And so in a way, open individualism is true on that level. But also, each of those individual brains only experience their own experience. They're not able to access the other brain's consciousness, except through what we tell each other with our mouths or through books and so on and so forth, but that's something else. But open individualism and closed individualism are, in a way, both true. So this is something I try to get Alex's attention on in the comments section, but he has no interest in it. He's a fan of Sam Harris. I know he most likely listens to a lot of Sam Harris's podcasts. I'm willing to bet he listened to Sam Harris's episode called The Paradox of Death, because that death is something that Alex is pretty interested in. He has made this clear in the past. So why wouldn't he listen to that episode? Chances are very high that he has listened to it. Yet he decided so far to just not say anything about it. So again, your life will not be followed by nothingness. It will be, whether or not supernatural things are true, or naturalistic atheism is true, no matter what is true, death can only be followed by an experience of some sort. Because again, it's a law of the universe that only experiences what's experienced. So no matter what actually happens after death, it will, in fact, be followed by an experience. Even if that experience, you're the last being in the universe and you die, and then billions or trillions of years later, another universe eventually emerges somehow, the same way ours did. After our heat death, eventually another universe comes to exist. And then at some point in time, a brain starts doing consciousness somewhere in that new universe. So all the time in between, would have been skipped over, just like we don't experience the time that we're unconscious when we're put under anesthesia, or any other time we're unconscious during life. So, and there's also the multiverse theory, so maybe our universe might end, but there might be plenty of others coming and going simultaneously. So that part is speculation. But why wouldn't another universe come to exist if ours came to exist? It just seems to be something that happens. Most things in nature happen many, many times, like each of these trees, each blade of grass, each weed, each plant, humans, everything. Oh, that's cool. Everything happens repetitively, over and over again. And each thing ends. And the end of that thing isn't the end of the universe. It isn't the end of things happening. It's just the end of that thing happening. Well, thanks for listening, and I hope you'll subscribe and share your thoughts below. Have a good day.